I know we're early. We're not going to start yet, but basically, I just wanted to get things set up here and ready for when we do start. So I've got my tea, got my light, and a book. Today we're doing again Fairfield Small Town 2, so hopefully get plenty of people here. It is 9:48, so we'll do the start in about 10 minutes. And have my tea. Now's a good time to kind of curl up on the couch with a blanket and a cup of tea yourself and get ready to listen. Trying to figure out what stories we're going to do next. I'm kind of thinking either some of my shorts from a glimpse of my short and another glimpse, or maybe this one will be what we read next. I think I've read a couple of these already, but kind of like a mystery in my pocket. It was a good book. I had fun writing, and yeah, I think maybe we'll do this one. But I'll tell you what, you can see the books I've got behind me. They're all listed on Amazon and all over the place. So if you can think of a book that you'd like to hear me to read next, or if you're an author, I have no problem reading other authors' works. And it doesn't have to be the full thing. It can be a couple of chapters, either in a row. I've done that for several authors that I've met on LinkedIn and had a great time reading them, especially one of my favorites was Steve Wolf's Ledge of Creation, which is hysterical. So if you're an author, would you like your book read in this forum? Not only do I read them, but I also write reviews and put those on my site and on Amazon. The only thing I request is that you send me a copy of your book, so that way I have something to show and read from, but it's not necessary. It's not mandatory. I'll even pick them up. This is my way of helping other authors kind of get a foot in the door and get some visibility. So we are at 9:50. We're getting there. It's getting closer. So we'll take a couple of seconds here. I don't think I can pause this, so I may have to edit some of the stuff out. Today is 2 chapters. We're going to continue to do 2 just to kind of keep the ball rolling here. And these are 2 interesting ones. Rocky was in the Army, so was Talbot. Both had a difficult time when they came back because they were in during the Vietnam War, towards the end of it. And the reception for Vietnam veterans wasn't the greatest. It was pretty shitty. So this was before they really even knew of what to call PTSD. Every doctor seemed to have their own ideas as to what was happening with these military people that were coming back. So there wasn't a unified treatment system. And that's the second story. We're going to deal with Rocky. The first one deals with Talbot, who has kind of personal issues going on. The first book, Talbot's wife was pregnant, and come to find out that it was a false pregnancy. So he's none too happy about that. Now he's not, taking it out on anybody, but he's certainly not. He kind of wants to be a dad and get the next generation going while he's still young enough to play with the kids. I'm working right now, just to let you know, on the 3rd book from this series. I didn't realize it was going to be a series when I started this, but apparently it's going to be. I'm only a few thousand words into the next book, but it's going to be interesting. The town continues to grow, and things that happened in the first book and second book affect the 3rd book. So it's a continuation, and I'm really enjoying this. I haven't quite decided. When I first started writing, another author once told me you have to kill your lovelies, which means every now and then you got to let one go. And I've been sitting here debating who the heck would I let go? I mean, I'll let you make that kind of a decision. And it's got to be impactful enough to that, kind of 3 years going, you can't do that. So we'll see what happens. I don't know if I have the heart in me to do it. I know I didn't really in the first books I wrote, the Time series. That's the other choice that I was thinking of making, is start from the beginning and literally work my way through the entire series. Because that was the first series I ever wrote. I enjoyed immensely writing them. So we'll see what happens. I kind of liked that series very much. We're getting on close to time. I want to give people a chance to come in and join us. Hopefully we get a few. I just sent a message out saying, hey, I'll be reading in about 15 minutes. Come on down, take a listen. So if you do enjoy these, leave a comment in the comment section. Let me know that you'd like these readings. Let me know why, and maybe I can make adjustments. So. Nobody joined us yet, so as soon as I get the word that somebody comes in here, and or it's 10 o'clock, which is maybe an unusual time to do a reading. I don't know. This is an experiment. We'll test it and see what happens. One problem is I don't have a clock anywhere within my line of view, so I got to keep looking over here at the computer, and I can't see that far. So 5 minutes. We are down 5 minutes. Sure, right. So let's choke here. So we're already 7 minutes into this without having read much, but you can see the book. So it's all set in Ohio, in case you were wondering. Small town in Ohio. There's the smallest town in Ohio is Rendsville, which is, I think, about 60 miles from where I am. And that place only has less than 50 people in it. So they've got they actually have a town hall, but it looks like an old feed area. So I've actually sent one of my characters in the first book there. That's where he ends up going after he tries to be the sheriff, gets selected, and then realizes, hey, it's a lot of work, and I'm not getting out of it what I expected. So he ends up becoming a problem. So we're getting closer. Couple of minutes left, and then we begin to do the reading. So I've been trying to think of a new venue. I've got Soul Man, which is my foyer into a little more unusual type of writing. It's kind of a mysteries type story done in the feeling of the shadow, but with a character who is shoe based, hence the name Soul Man. And it actually turned out pretty good. I've got a second book halfway done now, so I'm still trying to figure out a little bit more on how campy should I make this, or should this guy this is the persona that he uses to fight crime, and but he still takes crime fighting seriously. But we'll see where that one goes. When I start a book to write it, it doesn't always end up where I intended it to. The characters kind of drive a lot of it, and I'll lead it one way, and they're going, well, wait a minute, we don't want to go that way. We want to head this way, and we want to do this and that. And they're constantly talking to me in my head. So I'm like, okay, well, if that's what you want, that's what we'll do. So me and a friend recently started a story. I wish we had continued it, but it was based on spy cats. That turned out a lot of fun to write. We'd each check a couple pages, then send it back to the other person to work on. So it made it fun to do. And I'm gonna have to get up and see what the hell time it is. 9:58. Okay. Oh, I don't know if you can hear that, but we have a cuckoo clock, and it's going off now. So in a couple seconds, it's gonna start playing some nice music. That's another thing. If you can think of any music to play in the background while I'm reading these, that'd be kind of interesting. It'd have to be something classical because I can't afford to do a license for some, but I can't think of what kind of music would be a good background music. Well, I'll tell you what, let's just start. So we're going to start Sheriff in a Small Town 2, and the first chapter that we're going to read is Family Problems, concerns Talbot. So we'll get my little bit of tea here. For all you who are joining, welcome. And not officially is beginning the reading, so we're going to read from Sheriff in a Small Town, Family Problems, and Rocky Needs Help. So we're going to start now. Ever since Makayla Falk's pregnancy diagnosis, Talbot had become a different person. All the desire to be father that had shone so bright had not only been extinguished, but it had extinguished the fires in the man. Talbot moped around doing his job, but unenthusiastically. He never blamed Makayla and was taking it out on himself as if somehow he had failed as a man. Rocky was so concerned he suggested in the firmest possible way a friend could for him to get checked at VA. If nothing was wrong, then they could just keep trying. Talbot was hesitant about opening up on something so deeply personal. Probably never would have gone if Rocky hadn't tricked him. Rocky and Talbot were doing a run together. They had finished with town, were headed out to the farthest reaches of their territory. High in the hills they climbed, and upon reaching the top, they paused. Getting out, they looked over the countryside surrounding them. Far in the distance, they could see the roofs of town. It always gave Rocky a thrill to see the vast expanse of what they covered. Lotless farms, and these outlying places formed the outer edge, interspersed with large forested areas, small lakes, and rolling hillsides. He could just make out Roger Wilkins at the farthest corner, tilling muck into his field. 30-odd cows had provided the main ingredients, and he was adding it to the soil. In fact, that and the chicken muck was the only fertilizer he used. It had been moved to the other quarter to eat down the grass and weeds. A few goats and sheep milled around the same field, rising up on the side of a large hill. About half a mile off was a VA hospital. Rocky was determined that Talbot get checked so he'd know one way or the other. First, a short visit to Roger, then off to the VA. Rocky made an appointment for himself to get some reading glasses. It was an excuse to have to go and have Talbot with him. Driving down the steep hill, they drove past the hillside where there were around 30 sheep were grazing. Noticing that they were all facing the same direction, Rocky thought it'd be fun to pull Talbot's leg. It's a shame about those sheep, Rocky said softly, looking at them and shaking his head. Talbot was confused. They look all right to me. What's wrong with them? They're a special hill type Roger had to breed. They're born with the far side legs shorter than the others. That's why they all face the same way. They turn around the road down the hill, unable to get up again. Last year, I heard a dog got loose and scared a few. They turned to run, fell down, and ended up as lamb steaks. They were the biggest ones he'd reared, and with their thick coat of wool, they were just too heavy to lift. He had to put them down. He keeps close watch on them now, going to a sign that announced no dogs allowed. Talbot looked for any sign that Rocky was kidding, but his head was turned towards the side window and he couldn't tell. They rolled into Wilkins' farm just as he was parking the tractor. He climbed down and nodded. Sheriff, deputy, what brings you way out here? Rocky looked around, breathing in the scents of hay and cow dung as if it were the sweetest perfume. I just thought we'd pay you a call. You're so far out, we don't get a chance to see you except when you bring in some produce to the co-op. Got to say, that last batch of corn you brought in was the best I've ever had. Wilkins' grin broadened. Well, it should be. We had a right good year for corn. Lots of sun and heat makes the corn grow sweet. Rocky laughed at the old adage. What are you putting in now? Potatoes. This year it goes all out on potatoes. In the summer, there's so much potato salad floating around, it's amazing. Seems like folks eat nothing else. My wife has added a bunch more hens to get ready for the call for eggs. His wife Mary called him in for supper. He transmitted some silent signal, and his wife nodded yes. Tell you what, since we don't have the pleasure of your company often, why don't you come in and have supper with us? Homemade sausages, and of course, potato salad. Talbot didn't say anything, so Rocky accepted for both of them. Seated at the table, they chatted about the weather, price of corn, the next cattle market, and what he put into the excellent sausages. I appreciate you like them. I've been thinking about getting more pigs and making them in bulk. I gave a bunch to the co-op to see how they liked them. Well, if folks in town like them as much as them at the co-op, I'll be doing well. My son's going to start taking over the farm, so that'll free me up to become a Wurstmacher. I got a lot of recipes from my opa, and this was our favorite. Gotta pass it down to the next generation. My darn son ever gives me some grandkids. I'll teach them and turn the sausage making over when they hit their teens. Rocky saw that this kind of talk was beginning to upset Talbot, so he finished up quick, shook hands, and headed out. Mary handed over 2 paper wrapped packages of sausages and a basket of eggs each. Roger can pick up the baskets the next time he's in town. She hugged both men and hurried back inside. Roger slapped both men on the back. Don't be such a stranger. Always glad to see you, both of you. The company does us all the world of good. Talbot commiserated with Roger on having to kill the sheep that fell down the hill. Smirk on Rocky's face, he couldn't hide, explained the remark. Yeah, it was a real shame, but they made some good pies. He made a mental note to ask Rocky about it next time he was in town. He saluted them, climbed into his tractor, and fired it up. As they turned around, he headed out to the field with a stack of his tractor billowing white smoke. Yeah, but while we're out this way, I need to go to the VA and get a new pair of reading glasses. These damn ones are so scratched I can't see a thing through them. Look, while I'm there, you can see about getting an appointment. Talbot sighed and nodded. Rocky hated to push Talbot on something so sensitive, but until he knew for sure, he'd just keep worrying. Better know one way or the other. If it's the other, then the VA might be able to fix things, and he'd be back to his old self again. A week later, Makayla was looking for her husband all over the house. She found him in what was supposed to be the nursery. It had been the brightest part of the house, and now all the furnishings were covered in sheets. He'd often talk about wanting a larger family and been ecstatic when she thought she had become pregnant. He fussed over her like a hen with one chick. When they found out later that it was a false pregnancy, they were both crushed. False pregnancy was something they didn't talk about. Talbot had tried to hide the pain and disappointment from everyone, but here at home he'd sit for hours in the empty room. Once they knew that there wasn't going to be a baby, she had asked him to take everything to the cellar. Talbot couldn't bring himself to do it. It was like admitting defeat and that they'd never have kids. Keeping it up was his way of keeping the faith. Talbot was sitting on the ground holding a stuffed monkey. When she kneeled in front of him, she was shocked to see tears. She held him close as his tears flowed. Honey, we can try again, over and over and over until I get pregnant. He shook his head and pulled a letter out of his pocket. It was from the Veterans Administration with some test results. They said he was unable to have children. shock to his system was like being hit with a wrecking ball. When she first found out she wasn't pregnant, she got herself tested. She had come out positive. She was Myrtle the fertile turtle. Now he had come out negative, and it was eating him alive. She had considered adopting a child. There were plenty of children in need of a loving home. Talbot was adamant he wanted his own child, not someone else's. He looked at Makayla with such hurt it was breaking her heart. In the years since coming to this place, she had seen Talbot change from a hard man fighting his way through life to a man with a place in the community and a loving wife at home. He had friends who cared about him, a church that fed his soul, and a town that needed him. His confidence and pride had blossomed, and she had welcomed the change. She didn't have to continually bite her tongue, afraid of saying the wrong thing and incurring his wrath. Now he was the husband she had always wanted and knew he could be. The only terror was that he'd go back into his shell and become the man he had been. He got up and put on his coat. He didn't say where he was going, and she didn't ask. He went into town and sought out the chapel they went to. Kneeling on the front, he closed his eyes and opened his heart. When he opened his eyes, Pastor Martin was seated in the pew behind him. Dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, he was taking a rest from painting a basement classroom. I couldn't get any volunteers, so I've been painting the classroom on my own. Care to give me a hand now that you're here? Talbot couldn't just walk in, pray, and say, "Oops, sorry, I gotta go." He took off his coat and followed her downstairs. As they painted, they talked about things going on about town. Softball game at Sentinel Fields, the recent uproar about the new business trying to get a foothold into town. As they talked, Pastor Martin wasn't looking at Talbot, but he could read the pain and the frustration in his voice. Finally, he downed the brush, closed the door, and pulled two chairs over. Seated in one, he waved a hand for Talbot to sit in the other. Lawrence, when a man prays like you were, it's usually about family. You want to talk about it? Talbot tried to speak, but couldn't get the words out. He simply pulled the paper out of his pocket and handed it over. Having read the paper, the pastor stood and practically ordered Talbot to remain where he was, saying he'd be back in 5 minutes. He came back with a couple of cans of soda and sat down. A friend of mine's coming down. I'd like you to meet him. Pastor, I'd rather this didn't get out. I mean, I'm a deputy here. How'd it look at, well, you know what I mean. Pastor Martin shook his head. Don't worry, he and I have the same vow of silence. Nobody's going to know anything. Besides, he's from Clement in the next town, so nobody would know a thing. The man who walked in was short, gray-haired, and looked as if he had a good sense of humor. His face was as lined as a raisin and just as dark. Pastor Martin rose when he heard him walk into the room. Taking the hint, Talbot rose as well. Dr. Washington, it's good of you to drop in. This is Deputy Talbot. I'd like you two to meet. Socially or professionally? Let's start professionally and then work out the social. Dr. Washington chuckled as he sat down, indicating Talbot to sit too. Pastor Martin went back to painting. Deputy, Pastor Martin has told me about the letter you received. The problem with the VA is they tell you the bad news without telling you that you can be fixed. Well, I don't mean fixed, but repaired. So then sometimes it's as simple as stress doing it. Sometimes there's just something blocking the wigglies. I have to admit that very few times there's just a chance that there's nothing doing down there. You don't have any problem raising the flagpole, do you? Talbot stifled a laugh and shook his head. Good. That narrows things down a little. I can't do a test on the other things right here. Can't carry everything with me. So I want you in my office at, he checked a small notebook and taking a pen and wrote down Talbot name next to a time. 10:30, that's AM, or should I have said 10:30? Anyways, be there and we'll get you taken care of. The rest, well, that'll be up between you and your missus. If I can't get you right, we can talk about in vitro fertilization. Same thing, but without all the fun. You'll be there? Talbot stood and held out his hand. Yes, sir. I'll be there 15 minutes early. Thought you would be. Pastor Martin always says if you aren't 15 minutes early, you're late. He turned to the pastor. "You and I have a golf day for Saturday. Don't you forget it and don't look excuses. I won't be done out of my revenge." He trotted up the stairs and left in the roar of his engine as he headed back to his home clinic. Talbot picked up his brush. Pastor Martin shook his head. "Hell, you don't need the help. It was just my way of getting you relaxed enough to talk." Talbot kept painting, which made Pastor Martin happy. It's nice to have company, and Talbot had become good company once again, once he got opened up. Talbot was at the clinic half an hour early and eager to get things going. Makayla had wanted to accompany him, but he felt a little embarrassed about having her along. Dr. Washington performed some tests, the nature of which we don't need to go into. The findings were that there was an obstruction, and Talbot insisted that it be operated on as soon as possible. Dr. Washington shrugged and got his instruments ready. It's what we call keyhole surgery, so it's just a little slit. I remove the obstruction and sew you up again. And I kick you out. He called out front, letting them know he'd need an extra half hour. "It'll go faster if I just use the local, so lay down." He handed Talbot an eye mask. "Put this on. You might not want to see what I have to do." Talbot put on the mask and lay back, ready to bear whatever the doctor needed to do. 20 minutes later, he was putting his pants back on. "Give that about 3 days to heal up, or you're going to tear stitches. Hell, you might want to sleep on the couch, too. An erection could do it just as easy." He grinned at the look of fright that came into Talbot's eyes. "Hell, I'm just kidding, but for real, give it a few weeks before you go up to bat again." He washed and dried his hands and showed Talbot out the door. Talbot called Makayla, letting her know the operation was a success and they'd be able to have children now. Probably should have mentioned the 3-week waiting period, because when he opened the door, she was waiting for him with open arms and a ready invitation. He had to fend off her amorous attack and explain the circumstances. She let him upstairs, only slightly disappointed. They could still have a little close time since he was in a better mood now. All right, so that's that chapter. We're going to do Rocky Needs Help. That's another quick one. So we're getting on towards half an hour. About 10 minutes of that was me talking before, so let's go on. Rocky and Talbot were out directing traffic. It didn't happen often, but there seemed to be a lot more people in town than usual, and traffic was getting congested. Rocky was in the center of town, and Talbot was near the lake. It seemed as though someone was having a big to-do and invited pretty much the whole population of the 3 closest towns. As Rocky let more cars through, he saw through the windows the occupants were all young and dressed in bathing suits. Party at the lake. Suddenly it hit. It was the beginning of summer break, and the kids were out celebrating. He saw the older residents looking with irritation at these youngsters headed towards their fishing place and probably messing things up so bad it would be weeks before they could catch any fish. Rocky had had a few breaks like this and usually spent with Agnes. He sighed as he watched them head out. He was drafted soon after he reached 18, and instead of spending the summer at the lake, he had headed off to war. He'd done some swimming while deployed as well, but not for fun. It was in cold, murky, and leech-infested water. His face blackened and a knife tucked in his belt. In the distance, he could hear the muffled blasts of guns firing. From somewhere, hidden guns were strafing the water. He dived under as the splash of bullets approached his direction. He'd been ordered to seek out a guerrilla encampment and gain information on everything he could. He emerged from the water towards the river his captain thought they were located. Creeping through mud, grass, and snakes, he took a surreptitious route, edging his way forward. As he wove a tortuous route, he occasionally caught glimpses of firelight. This assisted him in locating his objective. Reaching out slowly, he searched with his hand for any traps in front of him. Avoiding the ones he could find, continued his twisted course. The enemy camp was ahead, and he could see their faces in the glow of the campfire. Camp was attached to a small village, so that civilians and the enemy were mingled. People emerged from hidden tunnels. He knew that within the tunnels were hospitals, supplies, command centers, who knew what else. He drew a map of what he saw, added estimates of probable enemy and civilians. Adding the locations of tunnels and entrances and visible landmarks, plus anything else that might be of use, he stuffed the folded page in a plastic bag and tucked it in his pocket. Turning around, he began to slowly crawl away. The toe of his boot brushed against the taut line. There was a sound of rushing wind as the bamboo pole snapped upright. In the slight light from the moon, a sharp point could be seen at chest height. Had he been standing, he would have been impaled. A bit of pressure as he put his hand on a slight amount of dirt, and a bullet shot up near his head. Even if it closer, he would have been shot in the face. Realizing that more traps than he had counted on surrounded the camp, he considered the options of upping his speed or moving inch by inch. The sound of the bamboo snapping upright and the bullet firing alerted the camp, and guns were fired towards his location. After the initial firing, they would fan out and search for him. He had to move quickly. Rising up higher, he headed for the river. Brushing aside venomous snakes with a long pole thrust in front of himself, he cleared a path. Every few seconds, the guerrilla fighters would shoot randomly in hopes of hitting him. Reaching the water, he encountered a small group of fighters waiting for him to emerge. The enemies to the front and rear, Rocky was in a desperate situation. He smiled as his mind called an old adage. Desperate times call for desperate measures. On the other shore were his comrades. From a pocket, he took an emergency flare gun and fired it into the air. His enemies were lit up by the light, but then so was he. The army on the other side fired as the fighters dove behind concealing bamboo, trees, and grass. Rocky had no time to turn and seek cover. He side rolled into the water as he was strafed. A couple of bullets found their mark in his thigh and foot. Leaving a trail of blood on the surface of the water, he swam to the other side while shots rang out from both sides. Arriving at the shore, he was pulled to land and quickly patched up. He made his way to the commander, who received his report, and in the triage tent, triage tent, he was hastily treated and his wounds cleaned and dressed. He hoped they had done a good job, as infection from the murky water was a definite probability. I need a drink, excuse me. He didn't have time to dry thoroughly or rest properly. The corporal arrived with another mission. He headed off with a deep boom of artillery fading behind him. As memories flooded back, the cold chills started. Feelings of panic and dread. It wasn't often that he had an attack that was this bad, but he was having one now, and the regular attacks were happening more often. Luckily, the traffic had thinned, and he stumbled rushed to the courthouse. He made it inside and collapsed. It was one of the worst he'd had for a long time, and he tried to collect himself. He still had a job to do. He went into the rear of the courthouse and got a small box from the shelf that was hidden behind a pencil jar. He took a joint that was mixed with a few other things to lessen the effect. Just needed a little to ease off the panic attack. He went out back and lit it, inhaling deeply, he allowed the tears to fall. It bothered him that he had to run to this to get himself together. He felt weak and worthless. Besides, it was illegal, and here he was, a sheriff in back of the courthouse, smoking a joint. He finished, and feeling more in control, he sprayed himself with Lysol and checked his uniform. His mask was on, and he wasn't going to show his weakness to the town. He headed to the lake and picked up Talbot. The group of youngsters were all panicked when they saw the squad car arrive. Rocky and Talbot left the guns locked in the car and got out to mingle. Bottles and cans were swiftly hidden, and a ballistic cigarette tucked under a long hair behind the ear. Talbot grinned. It's chill, folks. We just came out to say hi, and see how things were. Hell of a party you got going. Rocky sat at the table and picked up an unopened beer. Cracking it open, he faked taking a drink and passed it over to Talbot. Talbot also faked his drinking by sharing their beer with they were seen as friends instead of enemies. With the two officers sharing their beer, everyone relaxed. They were handed out hot dog each, and the party cranked it in high gear. The music was put back on, and lots more grills fired up. Rocky watched a scene he would have liked to have been part of years ago. After a while, they realized that there was a town to get back to and started to leave. Talbot grabbed his gun belt and swung it on as he slid into the car. Rocky was standing beside the open door and adjusting his when a series of blasts echoed over the lake. He dropped behind the door as his hand swept to his gun. Talbot had a firm grip on his arm, holding the gun in the holster. Rocky was scanning everything from behind the door, and the look on his face told Talbot enough. Easy, Rock. Just I'm setting off a few firecrackers. Another set went in rapid succession, and Rocky eased out of his stance. He slid into the squad car and headed into town. Talbot was worried. This was the third attack of this month, and it was only the 12th. The lingering smell of Lysol told him how Rocky was dealing with him. Problem was, Rocky wouldn't join the group Master Martin had set up in town, and which had helped himself. It was too close to town, and too many people would make the connection that their sheriff had issues. To Talbot, Rocky's biggest fault was holding himself to impossible standards that would challenge even Superman. He was becoming afraid that Rocky might take out his sidearm at the wrong time. Fortunately, Rocky rarely went armed. He felt that most situations didn't call for a threat, but instead needed calm reasoning. The fact that Rocky never went out armed unless Talbot was with him showed that Rocky knew he had a problem and trusted Talbot to protect him from himself as he had today. Rocky needed help, and while driving home, Talbot felt he might have a solution. Once home, Talbot talked to Makayla about having Pastor Martin, Rocky, and Agnes over. Makayla's response was both surprising and comical. She let out a screech and tore around the house, straightening up a place that was already clean as a whistle. He chased after her to calm her from panicking. For her, having a pastor or any minister of the faith over was like inviting the Pope or President. He had to hold on to her and kiss her to relax her enough they could talk. Honey, it's not like he's coming over tonight. I just wanted to talk it over with you before I invite him. He sat her down, explained the problem with Rocky and how he wanted to have Pastor Martin to have a talk with Rocky. She had seen Rocky over and when he was having a rough time and knew that her husband and he shared a common problem. It was a problem she'd never fully understand, but she knew that under Pastor Martin's group therapy, he'd become more adjusted. Of course, she considered that was just one more reason. Everything had to be perfect. She okayed the dinner, but told Talbot to make sure to find out what the pastor wanted to eat. He noticed there was no asking what Rocky or Agnes wanted. Pastor Martin was to be top dog at this dinner. The dinner was to be held on Sunday evening after it was getting to be a barbecue. Pastor Martin was a fanatic about ribs, so Talbot would be doing the meat while Makayla took care of the rest. She knew Agnes and Rocky would also be bringing a side or two, so there would be a lot less for her to have to do. For the next few days, Talbot was confined to the bedroom, bathroom, and kitchen. The rest of the house had to be kept perfect. Carpet had been vacuumed with alternating lines. Talbot quickly became thankful they didn't have the pastor over very often. On Sunday, Rocky and Agnes were there early and allowed to come in the back door and wait in the kitchen. The closer it was for the pastor to arrive, the more flustered Makayla became. Agnes tried to help, which was at first rejected, then accepted. To her consternation, the pastor arrived at the back door instead of the front. He had seen the smoke from the grill and walked to the back of the house. He was outside talking with Talbot at the grill when they both walked inside. Inside, the pastor took off his shoes and sat down in darned socks. Talbot handed Pastor Martin a soda and got a beer for himself and the rest. Sitting at the kitchen table, he looked completely comfortable. Kayla, seeing him happily drinking soda and eating deviled eggs and chatting with everyone, finally began to relax. When the meal was ready, everything was put on the counter and people helped themselves. Over dinner, the talk was all about goings on around town, the next social at the chapel, the surprising number of babies he'd had come in for christening. It had been a bumper crop, and he hoped Talbot and Makayla would be adding to it sometime. Well, we're working on it, Talbot exclaimed jovial. Makayla blushed and swatted him on the arm. Talking and eating, the evening sped past. Finally, the main point of the evening was brought up. Rocky Talbot came to me to see if you would be willing to talk about recent problems. Agnes, it wouldn't hurt for you to sit in as well. I've heard that since your ordeal, you've had a few attacks also. Makayla and Talbot cleared the table and put coffee on. Rocky, I know why you won't join our group therapy sessions. I understand that you don't want the town to see you coming in for help, but Rocky, you aren't doing yourself or the town any good trying to deal with this on your own. You're always there for others. Agnes, you are too. You take care of everyone but yourselves. Today, we're going to change that. Together, they discussed Rocky's past and brought his military actions into the open. Actually, I'd never heard half of the things Rocky had done and been through, and she finally understood why there were certain things Rocky couldn't do, well, comfortably or even discuss. Rocky, how have you been handling the big attacks? This was the answer, or a question Rocky had been dreading. Faced with answering to a pastor, he felt he had no choice but to speak the truth. I've been using marijuana. I have some joints hidden back of the courthouse. He hung his head in shame. Agnes was slightly shocked, but understood since she had a bag hidden in the bedroom closet. Martin nodded and went on. I figured that. It's usually that or heroin. Couldn't see you doing that heroin, though. Heavy drinking is also a way I've seen people deal with it, usually with detrimental effect to home and family. There are a couple of things I can offer you. The people who come to therapy are all in the same type, brothers and sisters in service. We keep each other's secrets, so you don't have to worry about word getting out that our noble sheriff needs help once in a while. Second, while a joint may be helpful, it can also be harmful in the long run. One of the things I use when I get an attack is this. From a pocket, he pulled out a tin containing clove buds. When I feel an attack coming on, I stick one of these in my mouth or under my tongue. The strong flavor shocks my brain onto other channels. I use this or suck on a cinnamon stick. I just took one and put it in her mouth. The look of shock and surprise made everyone laugh. Rocky took one too and had a similar reaction. Agnes snapped her fingers as she made a mental inventory of her kitchen. You know, I've got a big tin of those for when I make a ham. Rocky sucked a little more, then spat it out into a napkin. Well, it could help some. I put a few in an aspirin tin I've got. Agnes agreed, still sucking on hers. She decided that she might just be able to make some clove lozenges. Rocky, this is just an aid. It won't solve anything without therapy. My group is always open to you, or go to the VA. They're finally coming to an agreement on what is going on and working out ways to help people without just shoving pills down them. Will you do that? I know you're a man of your word, so I want you to promise to the highest authority you know that you'll go. Rocky earnestly bowed his head to pray, only to be tapped on his arm. Pastor Martin was grinning at him and pointing at Agnes. I meant your wife. Rocky promised and everyone got up to leave. Rocky and Agnes headed out first, and Pastor Martin was about to slip on his shoes when he was forestalled by Makayla. She grabbed his arm and practically dragged him into the front room. Talbot signaled that he was to sit down and stay just a bit longer. Looking around, he understood that Makayla had put a lot of time and effort into getting the living room, the whole house apparently company ready, and all they'd done was sit in the kitchen. Talbot brought out a tray with coffee and some rolls, and they sat for half an hour more. Pastor Martin spoke emphatically at how nice everything looked and wished he could get his own quarters as perfect. When he rose to leave, Makayla brought him his shoes so he could put them on and leave in the proper way through the front door. Wishing them good night, he thanked them for a wonderful dinner and evening, complimented Makayla on how perfect the house looked once more, and then went home chuckling all the way. All right, so we're going to go next one to Big Business, Doubles Down, and Local Boy. So I think that will probably be the next reading that we'll do. Today is Tuesday, so let's do that on Friday. And we're going to try again at 10 o'clock, so I hope you'll be here. And I hope you're enjoying this. Let me know. More comments I can get, the more I can do and know what to do. So I'm looking forward to seeing you again on the next one. So until then, be good and be good to yourself. Bye. And I always have a hard time doing this. Here we go.